In 2000X, on the 17th of December, Owen Vandell was born in Program for Heartbreak, Sartain and Love, also known as Romancing Poptus Doll Sartain Love, which was the fan-translated name that I called it in my Happy Tree Life video, is the second serialized manga by mangaka Tomoyaki Kagesura, released on Gingen Joker, which started shortly after Happy Sugar Life's manga had completed publication in 2021. It finished last year in Japan, but coincidentally, a month after my video was released, they started releasing chapters in English on Square Enix's manga app, Manga Up. Side tangent, but this website sucks. I wanted to check out the official release, and it won't let me make an account on the website, so I had to download the fucking app on my phone. Then, when I checked out the series, I was greeted with a surprise. Not only was it not complete and still releasing English chapters weekly, as of the writing of this section, they had been doing this by stretching the already pretty short chapters into sub-chapters, presumably to get more money since you have to use XP or money in order to unlock them like Webtoon. I understand making chapters paid, of course, and from reviews it said that this is a lot more user-friendly than other apps, but I don't like them butchering the pacing of the author's original release to spread it out longer. Unlike Happy Sugar Life, I don't really have a preconceived idea of this series, or even know that much about it in the first place. So why am I making this video? Well, it's much less of a retrospective than that video. I simply wanted to see what else Kagesura is capable of, and also to shut the door on what was left open last time. At least for now. Never mind all that. Enough dawdling. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day why I decided to do this. Will this be a better executed idea than Happy Sugar Life? There's only one way to find out. Let us dive into the lovesick world of Sartain and Love. Sartain and Love takes place in an alternate future, and in this future, humans created things called dolls, which are described as toys for humans to use due to their transcendent beauty and perfection. Basically androids. They utilize artificial intelligence for their identities, which isn't too alternate of a future from ours, and they have to follow 3 laws. Some might even describe them as laws of robotics, mayhaps. I'm sure you've heard of them. First, they can't harm humans. Pretty simple. Second, they have to obey orders from humans. Alright, that's their entire purpose, makes sense. Third, they can't fall in love. And why? Because it makes you stupid. Alright. I would say I'm surprised they have such a 4chan user law in place, but who else would want these child dolls? Basically, the dolls received overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam from international tech people when shown off, and because of this, all they need to do is perfect them before an everyday person can up their life savings to have an AI little girl do whatever they want with. Dude, I can't believe even pedophiles aren't safe from the threat of AI. In order to develop their artificial intelligence to be more intelligent than artificial, they have them spend time at this facility that's basically a mock high school. That is the justification for why we're in a school, and all of it is told through the exposition dump, just as graceful as the one I'm telling you right now. Similarly to Happy Sugar Life, in how every chapter was called First Life and so on, these chapters are labeled Anecdotes, which has a little relevance to the overall story, but also fits with a more general tone of the series at the start, as it's generally more focused on comedy with a little drama, giving a seemingly more laid-back feel. The writing reminds me a lot of the work scenes and Happy Sugar Nursery. The differences are pretty obvious when they straight up make a fourth wall joke in the first chapter. Anyways, the reason why the law of not falling in love exists is because apparently it results in an error in their AI, which causes them to turn into a lovey-dovey mess. Also, off topic, but I think it's funny how they drew in the cages, but really wanted this guy's face to be visible. So they made it disappear around that spot, and it looks like his neck has been pierced by it. Oh yeah, and if they fall in love, they could put in an incinerator. I've seen dolls survive those before, but those two are pretty cooked. Well, they're all cooked because all of the characters have fallen in love already, including the main character, if you'd be surprised by that, who's in love with a human? What? He's the scientist engineer guy who's in charge of managing all of them. That reminds me, the characters. This whole first chapter is nothing but exposition, so I haven't really gotten to introduce any. But none of them have really gone into other than the titular main character, Sartain, who's a bossy type who tells the other dolls to not fall in love. Basically, they're a huge hypocrite and also in denial. Also, the dolls can be level 1 furries, which is an important vital detail. It's evident from this, however, and the events ongoing, that the laws are less hardwired into the dolls and more suggestions. It makes sense as they need to attend a school to even develop, but since they are able to fall in love and have to choose not to, which they have already failed at, it means that the same might apply for the other rules. In the second chapter, it explains how there are 2 classes in the school, Alpha and Beta, and another girl reading a shoujo manga falls into love with this black-haired girl, so another one gets added to the kill count. Sartain mentions that the emotions are programmed into their software that causes them to fall in love, which might imply it's intentional that they fall in love eventually. That twist is predictable Sartain's feelings, as this nerd who instantly calls out that she likes the twink Takuto Maruki wannabe named Kusari Izanami. He's explained to be a developer of the ARC Foundation, which is very ominous, totally not foreshadowing, and definitely not like the ARC from Sonic Adventure 2, and he's basically the guy who saved the ARC doll industry by making them, well, good, I guess. None of the other dolls seem to like him very much since he does weird things to them. Sartain leaves and the nerd does a little tease of there being another side, while she copes about her love while reading the manga from earlier. Kusari Izanami walks in catching her, where she makes an excuse, resulting in a scene where she gets stripped and she's all blushing and stuff and yada yada. It ends with them discussing how their mushy doll brains can't handle love and some future dolls might be able to handle it. She says the most blatantly, "I have a crush on you" stuff I've ever seen in my life, and he smiles, so I think it's safe to say he's aware of their feelings. Meanwhile, the emo kid from the previous chapter is talking to the nerd about how they all know she's in love and that they're a part of the alliance of dolls in love. They hope by convincing Sartain to join them, they can achieve the right to love. Since it looks like they're not stupid like the ones before, they might be onto something. The gang is full of a lot of kooky and lovable characters. We still don't know any of their names. Don't worry, it won't be long. Izanami exposits about how humans aren't involved other than him for basic-ass scientific variable reasons, while requesting budget increases like the average school principal, and meanwhile Sartain is forced by the Alliance to listen to their love stories in an attempt to sway their opinion. Okay man, slow the fuck down. This is a good time to mention the breakneck fast pacing of the series. It was set up in chapter 1 that they were already all in love, and by chapter 3 they were already talking to Sartain about it. It helps keep the reader's attention and never feels like nothing is happening, which is good, but we don't really get anything built up. This doesn't feel like a big moment for Sartain's character, being the incident to start the character development, since it was just introduced in the previous chapter. Also, how long have they been in this school? They just randomly decided to blow their cover to convince her now? Maybe they formed this club like a few days ago or something. Also, speaking of the goons, they all tell their stories, basically resulting how they fell in love with the dolls they like and managed to not be idiots, at least in the same sense of 2 at the beginning. Mermaid likes this cat girl who really only fucks with his legs, and Cinderella gets told that their emotions ruin their face, basically telling her to smile more, which, once again, worked a lot better when I did it. Seeing this, Sartain immediately considers joining, and it isn't long before the nerd finally convinces her. The nerd fellow also says who he loves is secret, and I have $17 and FanDuel on it being Sartain. Alright, Sartain is now an official member of the Alliance. What's the first line of action for this ragtag group of revolutionaries? Well, it's obvious. Love terrorism. By showing the entire school a successful confession of love, it will break the law of the dolls and show how they are actually capable of love, and all of the dolls secretly practicing love will be able to openly exhibit their feelings. Also, this one lying kid wants a harem. The teacher for Happy Sugar Life's legacy lives on in the youth. They ask Sartain to keep it a secret from Mr. Izanami, which shouldn't be that hard, but I guess it really is for her. Now, it's time to get the characters' names. The vice president is named 12. Okay, man. We already met Mermaid and Cinderella from their respective love stories. Lion got its name dropped early in this chapter, but we don't really need to remember that, though. The emo kid's name is Alcott, followed by the other dark-haired individuals, Snow White and Maria. They also almost forget Mage. Who the fuck are you? There's also a distinct lack of melanin in any of these characters, but I wasn't really expecting anything. Happy Sure Life didn't have anyone that wasn't pale shit either. While Sartain is stressing the fuck out, Cinderella jumps sending her straight into Izanami's arms. Excellent, that's just what she needed. She leaves him with Cinderella while thinking about how she loves him, and then Cinderella wants to talk to her about love. So she talks to more about how much she loves him, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is getting insufferable. I don't really like how the main character is a robot permanently shaped to look like a child, and is in love with an adult male human. And we have to keep hearing about it. But I don't know, guys, maybe this is a deep horror like Happy Sure Life. Let's keep reading to find out. Cinderella explains she's a Grim number Cinderella model. You know, like Grimm's fairy tales, and because of that, she wants to be happy with her prince. This seems like a very inconvenient model for a series of dolls that are supposedly not supposed to be capable of such feelings, or allowed to have such feelings. She asks Sartain to watch her confess, which she says she will because she looks beautiful, and being beautiful is good, and these dolls have the most shallow society and culture of all time. But I guess that makes sense since they're all creations to be sold off a profit. Also, what the fuck is Black X Black Coffee? The last chapter of this volume is Confession Day, where they discuss how both of them will take place at the same time for each class, and how Cinderella would prefer if only Sartain attends hers. While they wait, Cinderella tries to pressure Sartain to agree to confess afterwards with her, which isn't very nice to do that to your love buddy. Shortly after, Cinderella confesses to Bard, who rejects her, the reason being that he's a Bard model. He doesn't feel that the same at all and leaves. Sartain starts tweaking out, and Cinderella falls to her knees in despair. Cinderella goes crazy about the feeling coursing through her. She grabs Sartain, begging to be saved, but when faced with reflection, she dashes away, holding the button to drop the chandelier, which was right at the start of the scene, but I didn't bring it up because it was the most obvious Chekhov's gun ever, and presses the button, dropping the chandelier and killing herself. Wow. What a drama queen! Sartain tries to comprehend what she saw before Izanami shows up and does that bird thing where he covers her eyes, putting her to sleep. Okay. He asked Cinderella why she confessed even when the funny shoujo manga told her rejection was a thing that could happen, and she explains how she couldn't handle the anticipation, which is normal for everyone. He makes it a thing about the forbidden fruit, which is kind of relevant, I suppose. When prompted, he tells her he loves Sartain, which causes her to die pissed off. Izanami then reveals that love causes their self-destruct command to go off, and that's why it's a law. Wowie! Then says he'll reject Sartain softly if she hurries a confession. I like to think this means he just lied to Cinderella to make her die malding. It ends the volume with 12 listening on the walkie-talkie, implying he was hearing everything, which is pretty convenient that he happened to say all this shit out loud, so he was able to overhear. The start of this manga is strange. It's a longer burn than Happy Sugar Life, and the tone is more lighthearted. I can see it's trying to do a similar thriller concept in the reveal, but to be real, it's not super impressive. The confession going south and the chandelier was pretty predictable setups, and the tone change and the reveal of Izanami being some Sato-adjacent sociopath was also tame and expected. I'm interested to see where it's going, but I'm not super invested. None of the characters are super intriguing yet, but I guess there's only one thing left to do. We gotta keep moving forward. Chapter 6 opens Volume 2 with more exposition. Joy! We hear the story of how back when dolls were just dolls, till some guy that's totally not Izanami was with the first doll to have a sensory information brain, who ended up falling in love with them. He said no, and they fucking died. And he says, I will put you back together. All of this is very obviously implies that Izanami is trying to make a doll close enough to be human. Then he can love it. So there's a game called Library of Ruin. She wakes up with 12, who freaks her out because he looks different than the catalog since his glasses broke. This girl's obsessed with things advertising themselves. She would hate Tinder. He explains what happened previously, and they have some pretty confusing takeaways. He was able to take a step forward, but she literally tries to kill herself. I thought he was lying to Sartain, but he explained how she malfunctioned after confessing. Maybe they were betting on Sartain not putting it together, that one caused the other, which is dumb. Izanami shows up and squishes her face before trying to gain aura by intimidating 12 by calling him out for lying, which is the least tense shit ever, before he starts feeling like it's his fault for Cinderella's death since it was his idea, which is a little right. Whatever, Sartain snaps him out of it and they move on. Chapter 7 starts on with a random note about Snow White not giving much of a shit about this girl named Alice, before we see Mermaid's confession where he's wearing short shorts to increase the odds of success, I suppose. I really don't like how much they describe this boy's legs, man. He confesses to the gat girl named Natsume Neko, who says yes, and they start getting really touchy-feely. These pages randomly have a film reel pattern with a happy end mark, which is strange and a little out of place, but I see the vision. Also, the dolls canonically don't know what kissing is, which makes sense since supposedly their only exposure to this stuff has been 2 leaked volumes of a shoujo manga, and there's a good chance they don't kiss in those, so remember that these are basically mentally children, okay? Okay. Anyways, suggest opposing topic. Due to the success of Mermaid's love terrorism, Love's approval is in the rise among the doll population, and Team Love has taken 30% control over the school. Meanwhile, 12 retrieves his repaired eyewear, and Sartain is coping to Maria about how the chandelier stuff was an accident, while she gives no fucks, and we see a flashback of Sartain explaining to Snow White how she's not defective and should show her feelings more. She then makes her appearance in the present and is mad at Sartain, which results in an actual bona fide fight scene. Choreography's a little rough, and it's not super long, but I appreciate the attempt. Also, the cat is a fucking cheater, I guess. That's cool. Snow White is mad at Sartain since Alice got hurt, presumably the person she loves. I also thought it was because the flashback showed her being told by Sartain how showing feelings is good, but then the failed confession said otherwise, making it seem like a betrayal or lie. Sartain decides to suddenly take responsibility before Snow White gets a vision of Alice, which is weirdly framed, feeling super out of place, stopping her in the tracks and leaving. Chapter 8 has Izanami confiscating the weapons, and when Neko protests, he threatens her with one-on-one practice. She gets scared and does a hard pass. Even the dolls think this guy's a creep. Describe him as a human who's doll-like, which is also the name of the chapter, which is, in my opinion, supposed to relate to his double-faced sociopathy. Neko starts glazing Snow White and says she loves her because a lot of these girls are bisexual, and Mermaid gets bothered by it. This has happened so much, it's probably set up, and I would bet on someone dying, but I already have bet all my money previously, so oops. Meanwhile, Snow White is crying in the room Alice is staying in, asking her to open her eyes like she's in a coma, and we get a lore dump about Snow White is another Grimm model, because of course she is, and it's also named after a fairy tale. I don't see exactly what these models are supposed to have in common other than that, though. Alice Beta is called genderless, which is either used in place of a term like androgynous, or this implies they have gender-specific attributes, which it's true they have tits, but does this mean they have genitalia too? And more apparently, do the carpets match the drapes? The two of them were the exclusive couple among dolls, and have been hiding it pretty well for someone who has such a stick up their ass like Sartain to not notice. Sartain is thinking about how hideous her face looked when Alcott rage baits by saying it's a reasonable response, which worries Sartain, who suddenly starts feeling empathetic, like she wasn't acting like she wouldn't give a shit if any of them fell in love and got gassed like 7 chapters ago. When told by 12 that it's their own fault for their actions, and if they break the laws they should be disposed of, relating back to her speech at the beginning, she freaks out thinking about what she's done. I think the art at the end of this chapter is nice. After this is chapter 9. 12 was mad at Alcott for being an ass, when it's established that Alcott has the hots for 12, who's basically using it to get him to help him, which Izanami calls him out on later on. Mermaid then asks about a negative feeling he has been feeling, hearing Neko wax eerily about Snow White, which brings up a big similarity this has thematically with Happy Sugar Life. A big part of Saoto's character was how she was unaware of most feelings before meeting Shio, being a sociopath and all, and how throughout early in the story, like after meeting Asi for the first time and hearing about him spout the "I can't believe it's not pedophilia" vows, she would have to deal with these feelings and discovering them for the first time. That is a much bigger focus in this series, as since all the characters are literally inhuman and developing artificial intelligence, they have to discover these feelings they are completely unaware of similarly. This instance with Mermaid discovering what obviously is jealousy is similar to the instance I gave with Sato also learning jealousy, except one is focused on the disturbing tenseness of Sato breaking down over feeling angry about Asahi, while in this series it's building it up to be used later on, and with the lighter tone it gets a way of swatting it away by 12 reassuring him that he should be more confident because the image of his relationship is helping their movement. He's basically a celebrity couple. Also, Sartain tries to kill herself Lamau. Izanami shows up to stop her, and she says she's upset because of all the people she gassed, suddenly getting remorseful because she realizes she's responsible for people's deaths, which she didn't give a fuck about before. I understand that she viewed love differently now, but it's a little weird how it was a joke how she didn't fucking care the instantly killing them all before, but now is all upset about it because of seeing what it caused through Snow White. I guess she's stupid and doesn't have working empathy yet. 2 for 2 on this guy's manga's protagonist then. Well, it's all good because it turns out they're alive, and Sartain burning them was the correct thing because when they turn stupid, their AI can become unbackable. So by killing them, you can allow them to bring them back to life, all good as new and loveless. Luckily, this doesn't reverse all of Sartain's development, so she doesn't seem entirely relieved by this revelation, but Izanami declares that she should share her own feelings now that she's aware of others, wink wink nudge nudge, and that she can rely on him to do literally anything if she needs help. Alright guys, it's the most industry plant anime fuckboy ever. The comments I've seen on the manga trying to read it definitely say it worked for the 3 people that even care about this series. Sartain thinks about Cinderella, and Izanami interrogates again, thinking she was about to say something, but she doesn't and leaves. In chapter 10, they discuss theories on why some dolls haven't woken up yet after their act of love terrorism, in which Maria points out how it was only dolls in class beta, where Cinderella confessed and suggests class beta dolls have an interior problem. Dude, what the fuck? How are you becoming doll racist? Sartain is thinking about whether dolls can handle these emotions when she, once again, runs into Snow White, who ignores her so she can threaten Izanami while pointing a knife at him. Sartain puts up the weakest fight ever before getting shut out. Izanami comments on the impressive nature of Snow White's AI, on being able to mimic human feelings, which is probably better than how he's pretending to be one too. 12 assists in a minor instance of espionage action, while Izanami tells Snow White something we don't hear before she stabs straight through his hand. They point out how my assumption about the laws was very much correct, and while it's predictable, it is interesting how the characters could react to learning the primal rules ingrained in their system can be broken in an environment where they aren't held accountable by anyone other than themselves and the single guy. And also the reason why she went to threaten them is because 12 informed everyone about this. Also, Izanami barely relaxed to getting his hand impaled, though it wasn't clear this guy wasn't normal.
For what purpose?
When faced with the massive choices in Snow White's thought cloud, Sartain finally manages to break in and interject, resulting in a scuffle that causes them to fall the room's window. Continuing to the next chapter, where they randomly put more exposition. A big critique I have about this series is the overuse of starting a chapter with some mysterious narration while something mysterious occurs to give us a little more info about. This one gives us a knowledge about how Izanami was trying to make a being more perfect than humans, and some girl worked with him, and it's pretty unrelated to what's going on in the moment, which it gets to right after, being the fight we left on. The aspect of heartbreak causing them to die is something we already know, so I feel like the timing of the scene is a bit rough on the pacing, but I overall don't think the pacing is bad at this point. I actually feel the ending of the previous volume and this one work well in keeping interest going. There always feels like something is going on, and there's a reason something is shown, even if blatant and unsubtle, but I just feel like they're going too heavy on the telling and not enough on the showing. It reminds me how, similarly, in Death Stranding, there's scenes after leaving a private room where you get a first-person perspective flashback from your BB, which, unlike this series, actually has a big payoff in the reveal at the end of the game. Speaking of telling, right after this we find out what Izanami told Snow White, being that he confirmed that 12 already told her about the laws, but also how love and heartbreak works for dolls, and telling her Alice won't ever wake up again, which causes heartbreak in her, so on cue, Snow White starts freaking out. We see the memories of Alice getting warped, and I like the visuals of her head turning into flowers, and the detail of the spelling being the same as the beta doll saying I love you, though I don't know if this was present in the original Japanese text or just a localization edition. Snow White mirrors Cinderella's breakdown by calling out to be saved, but by Alice rather than Sartain because she really doesn't fuck with her. Also, I know it's standard for manga, but I really wish they didn't feel the need to spell out the parallel by flashing to Cinderella's. I'm a big kid. I can eat my veggies, do my homework, and practice media literacy. Sartain is reminded during their fight of what Izanami told her and decides she needs to break her before she corrupts too much beyond saving. So she plunges a knife into her chest, where Snow White laments with her final artificial breath that she had to die to Sartain of all people, someone she despises, which is a good moment if it didn't feel a little forced. Like, Alice has been comatose for maybe a day, and you two guys were shown to be close as fuck, so what the hell? Sartain cries, since they will probably never make up. Izanami explains that Sartain has always been more prone to break from emotions, which I wish was hinted at a bit more. I like the subtle detail that she seems to be new to school in a line earlier in this volume about just getting there, because she was probably broken relatively recently, which it would have been nice to see how she was more emotionally vulnerable. I mean, I guess she's been freaking out pretty consistently, but she has gotten more screen time than almost any other character, being the protagonist and all, so it's expected we see her emotional side more, and Cinderella expresses is feeling similar dread in the anticipation of confessing, so it's not entirely exclusive. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, Izanami gets called out by 12 for manipulating their hearts, and he goes, "Nuh-uh, you keep queerbaiting your friend Alcott, so we're basically the same. You criticize society yet participate? I am very intelligent." That's when the bombshell drops that we find out that Izanami knows 12 loves Sartain? What? And is trying to set her up with Izanami so she can be happy. So my man 12 is a fucking cuck. Well, at least I get my money back. Where's my 17 bucks? What do you mean it was canceled? 12 has unconditional love for Sartain and wants her to be happy. So the whole reason he was trying to get this love stuff to work out was to make it so they could possibly be together. What the hell? Other than it making me annoyed at him, I wish we got a little more foreshadowing on the setting up part. There was no indication that he was interested in specifically allowing for human-doll relationships, even tangentially, so it feels kind of out of nowhere. So when Izanami comes in and reveals it, I'm not only like, what the hell, but also, how the fuck did this guy know? Izanami, impressed by all this and having a science boner, wants to test 12's resolve by seeing if he can handle confessing to, and presumably the following rejection by, Sartain, kind of as a sort of sacrifice. I'm pretty certain he'll be fine with that, considering he's already doing all this for her. So what's some emotional damage gonna do? I mean, Izanami straight up says he thinks he'll survive at the end, but adds that dolls can't stop thinking about someone until they break. Which I know this is supposed to focus on the until they break part, but this kind of implies they can't stop loving someone, which could be foreshadowing something with Mermaid, considering his one-sided relationship with Neko. Also, does that mean Lion wanting Ohara makes him turbo fucked? Volume 3, by extent Chapter 12, begins with a flashback without narration, other than like one box at the end. For once, where we see an earlier rendition of Sartain with longer hair meeting 12, or any other doll, for the first time. We don't really learn too much other than, like, Sartain used to be less aggressive, I guess. Speaking of which, they really toned down her bitchiness from Chapter 1 very quickly. It kind of makes it seem out of place how stubborn she was in Chapter 1. 12 then talks to his boyfriend about how it seems the intent of the school is to try and fix the whole killing yourself immediately after rejection thing in dolls, which it would also be nice if they could fix that in humans too, thanks. They question if he really cares about them since he forced a heartbreak on Snow White. I think it's safe to say no. I was never really under the impression he gave a shit about any of you other than Sartain. Wait, who the fuck are you? Melanin? I never thought I'd say this, but Tomoyaki Kagisora 1, Hoyoverse 0. This Rosebell guy suggests they murk Izanami and leave. What is this, some kind of assassination classroom? Also, he loves this hamster-sized girl. Okay, man, who cares? This guy wants Aura so bad with the way he is talking. All happy, but dropping random ominous statements, even like, yeah, we all know how loves end, dude. That's the whole point of the series. Well, it turns out he was onto something, because it turns in 12 wants Sartain to get with Izanami, because his cuckoldry stems from how he thinks dolls loving each other is pointless, since dolls exist to be sold to humans, so they should only love humans. Basically, he believes in the doll patriarchy. Also, randomly thought that I feel like the other dolls would kind of have an issue with this, considering your leader directly doesn't believe your love is right. But okay, who cares? He's such a nice guy too, saying this directly to Alcott, who is a doll in love with him. But he seems to take it just fine. He actually brings up why he hasn't died when that's a pretty clear statement of, I don't love you, coming from 12. But they just kind of go, I don't know. Meanwhile, Sartain is crying about Snow White, and Izanami tells her to cut it out because they only have a limited amount of water in a doll's body, and he really doesn't feel like refilling her built-in humidifier, which is hilarious. He reinforces Sartain's decision and tells her they'll make up when it shows her waking up and still remembering everything that went on and still loving Alice. So what's the deal? The other dolls that were dead in Volume 1, when revived, seemed to be chill, so I assumed it reset before their love, so I guess Snow White specifically might have got backed up in her fucked up state. It might be because she's the only doll, as of now, to be revived post-heartbreak. Oh, I get it. They experience heartbreak, which causes their heart to literally break. Ah, you sly dog, you. I see what you did there. Hey, oh. Maybe I'm not the only licensed wasser around here. Turns out Izanami's a bitch-ass liar when he just wanted to fuck with her to see what would happen. What a massive troll dude, this guy just doesn't care. It's kind of a little funny. Snow White tells Alice she needs her to hate her, which even the mentioning of the word hate causes her to get a migraine. She questions just how fragile dolls are, which I wish there was more evidence of them being like super sensitive, because most of these guys either just fuck around and don't care, We're all lovey-dovey, no in-between. The only one that is kind of close other than Sartain and Snow White is maybe Mermaid, but because of how comedically toned the dialogue is, he doesn't seem really out of place for being a little comfortable with the fact his girlfriend wants to fuck another girl super bad. The reason Snow White wants Alice to hate her is so that she isn't under the risk of getting heartbroken if she doesn't love her anymore, which was very unsubtly hinted at in the previous chapter with Minstrel, the guy Cinderella killed herself over, getting his cameo of Rosebell. Unsurprisingly, this doesn't work apparently because Alice dolls are made with love. I wish these doll types were a little more fleshed out like the types of androids in Nier Automata. It just kind of feels like they sometimes associate aspects of a character to the type of doll they are, which is just their name. Maybe if we could see different characters with the same doll type and how they handled the aspect of their AI programming differently relating to love, it could be more interesting. But as of now, it feels like random details starting to add a semblance of world building. Also, I wanted to mention that if Alice dolls are made with love, like does that mean like they're made with love, so that means they have to love? How the fuck is this facade that love is bad for dolls gone on at all when they have literally the love dolls? When faced with Alice's declaration, Snow White is filled with emotion and starts talking about becoming. Whoa, what the fuck? I'm more concerned how Snow White knows about that, considering Neko only knows about kissing from researching humans. So, does Snow White just watch porn? Alcott and 12 blueball them and ask for her to inform them on the experience of getting heartbroken, which she validly is like, man, what the fuck, I just died and you're asking me about this? 12 then declares he's going to use his one wish, granted by Shenron, I mean the benevolent Izanami, to end the experiment. I see why he'd want that, but honestly, he better tag on some conditions because I don't see what stopped him from saying, okay, and then scrapping all of them for parts. They brainstorm about what happened with Snow White, first discussing if maybe it's because they need to upgrade their graphics cards or processors or something. But that can't be the case because they have super cool pedophile government funding. They're already top notch. Snow White recalls her trauma and says they should kill her.
What? I'm gonna kill him!
They argue a little before they hear someone coming and stop talking before seeing it's Izanami. They were apparently yelling all this with the door wide fucking open, and Izanami is probably fucking omniscient or something, so he 1,000,000,000% heard them. And it's honestly their own fault, even though we all know bro isn't gonna do shit. Luckily, the boys have instant transmission, so they can hide, mostly because 12 is low-key pissed at him right now. Maybe they can use that ability to confirm the kill on Izanami and take down the school's god of destruction! Sartain also tagged along with Izanami so she could make up with Snow White, and unfortunately for Snow White, her girlfriend and arch enemy Twink Dictator are both there, and both want her to forgive her, so she doesn't really have a choice. Snow White spits facts though. Sartain's taste is turbo ass. This guy is Red Flag City. When he goes to do a checkup on the two, Snow White immediately threatens to kill him so he doesn't take advantage of Alice. Bro, what the fuck is he doing during these checkups? Do we need to call someone? He tries to apologize to her, but of course it's actually a barely veiled threat to kill her himself next time and turn her back to normal. He really is just a mastermind, but not in the sense that he's like super smart, but more in the sense he has a Minecraft server with commands, so no one stands a chance. He then explains how if she kills him, he'll get replaced by another human. Also, here's some shit about how the laws are actually in you now, and if you break them, your robo-consciousness will give you anxiety disorder from the cognitive dissonance, and you'll also suffer endlessly because you aren't doing what I want. He also hints again at some sort of humanity expulsion, so I would bet that there's something he wants to prevent or cause relating to humanity, but I don't know, guys. I'm not a gambling addict. I'll keep my winnings from before, thank you very much. Sartain tells him to cut it out, and he follows suit, which transitions to 12 making baseline observations like, why does this guy like Sartain so much? He says he loves her, but also said he'd reject her? You know, the stuff we're also thinking in the back of our minds. Surely this isn't a sign these answers will be relevant coming up, because the author can't rely on his very intelligent and very smart and well-adjusted fanbase. Alcott suggests the option of getting rejected himself so they can use him for research, which is a fair idea. He's not really doing much otherwise. Alcott brings up how 12 literally did the same to Cinderella, which ticks 12 off to yell how he didn't want Cinderella to die, giving Wheeler cover like a fucking dumbass. The whole hiding thing was kind of pointless anyways, but whatever. The next chapter, we get a glimpse of Minstrel again. I hope this bard fuck has a purpose. And then we get some internal monologue about how 12 liked being alone before Sartain and starts to have doubts in his abilities as a revolutionary in the world's smallest feeling school. Seriously, all the NPC students just don't exist anymore. It feels like a Monogatari classroom. Sartain rams into him to check up on him, probably to make sure he's not going to fucking kill himself. During this scene, Sartain timidly talks to him about how she's also feeling inadequate for her position, and I think this is a good spot to bring up how I'm not entirely a big fan on the direction they took her character so far. It feels like 12 almost replaces her as a protagonist a lot of times because he has all the agency and decision making of the characters, and Sartain is sidelined, just talks to Izanami most of the time. I wish it was more of a focus. It kind of reminds me how in Happy Sugar Life, Asi took more of a protagonist role near the end of that series. But I feel like that change fit the direction the show was going for, and I actually wish they more went into it and showed more clear differences between Asi and Sato's perspective. And also, that was pretty late in the series, while in here, it's pretty early. We're like barely halfway through. It doesn't feel really intentional, and more like they didn't really know what to do with Sartain for a bit. Also, Sartain said she loved him because he said he needed her, and that's basically fucking it. She's got to be hard set to love him every time or something, because that's pretty nothing. After mulling over his feelings, and Sartain's love for Izanami, and his love for Sartain, 12 finally caves and tells her the next step of their love terrorism plot, and that's having her sleep next to Izanami for 2 days. It's a little funny to imagine he did all that multiple page inner monologue because he really didn't want Sartain to sleep with Izanami, but had to tell her. Alcott apologizes to 12, who forgives him, and asks why he's so willing to kamikaze when he explains how it's because Alcott loves 12. Duh. And he does a double whammy begrudging commands by asking Alcott to please kill himself for him. That's awesome. In the next chapter, we get a small glimpse of young Sartain again when chilling in Izanami's office before the author remembers about the other cast members that have been absent, and Rosebell has to fill them in on the important plot stuff they missed out on. How convenient! He did the equivalent of asterisk explains it all to them asterisk. They discuss Alcott's suicide plan. He says he just wants to be useful to the boss. Maybe if he survives, he can even surpass the boss. Rosal mentions when asking 12 why Sartain and them are both antidote models, like the chapter's name's what? Neither 12 nor Alcott want to tell Rosebell anything because he's a jackass and will laugh at them. I mean, fair enough, this guy seems like that. He says it's strange 12 won't make a move on Sartain even though he loves her, which isn't really strange at all. Rosebell exposits some info to the audience, I mean himself, about how they're the only 2 anecdote models and they're based on a small bit of history little known about. Sartain's name apparently comes from 13, and the visuals imply the existence of others. And he says the dumbest fucking line ever. Could there be a secret concerning these 2? Fuck off, dude. This is as subtle as a brick to a head, or a tree branch to my windshield. Also, Alice's minstrel sister because they're sibling models. Okay, I don't see exactly how that matters. Maybe some humans want dolls to be accustomed to the Oni-chan style personality or something, and this is practice to have the dolls be able to imprint the human as their sibling or some shit. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Snow White stands on top of the school like Yoshi in Mario 64 and talks about escaping this hell. And we see the school is on an island. Holy shit, is this Epstein's island that Sato and Shio are gonna escape to? We get more of a look at how the minstrel isn't in love with anyone. I like it kind of works as a sort of Arrow Ace allegory. Everyone around him seems to be in love with someone and causes them to feel left out and feel wrong for not being able to feel those things for someone in that way. Sartain randomly asks at the end of the chapter about some exposition, so I can't wait to hear more of that. Surely Izanami won't lie to her, right? Well, then we talk about it if he wants them to fall in love or not, before he redirects into adding another hole in his ear. I'd like to think the others are from previous times he had to pull this card on Sartain before. Also, when 12 and Alcott are discussing if it's good for Sartain to be with him, I don't like the way 12 says this. He would be crazy if he did. She really freaks out since piercing his ear would be harming a human. He insists, saying he really needs her help. The way it's framed, she's willing to do it specifically because it's sensei, but wouldn't this also qualify under the law that they must obey what a human wants? Usually, with the law of robotics, they chalk it up to the hurting law overriding the obey one, but this is different considering the laws aren't hardwired concepts into their actions, more so their beliefs. She manages to pierce his ear, and after looking at her face, he thinks it'll only be a little longer until something. Him saying this is unnecessary, cause like, I can infer the reason he did it with my comprehension skills. I don't need him to say ominous lines so I can go, wait guys, what does he want here? I can think for myself. Alcott is confused about love being a human emotion and all, and how it works, but the way he words it makes it seem like he just wants to join Paul Kuhl. He asks 12 to give him a happy ending by smiling when he dies, which he calls selfish, but like, isn't he literally dying already for you? Fuck off of that, man. Fake a smile for your guy you queer-baited. Anyway, it's no shocker to me that it fails when he gets rejected and nothing happens. The rules and logic behind the laws of dolls are made up as the story goes along, so expecting something to actually adhere is ridiculous. Also, at this exact moment, Minstrel starts tweaking out and Rosebell calls out that he actually loved
Cinderella.
Along, I guess the rejection gave him a PTSD episode. Apparently he did love her, but didn't know. That's a fucking bullshit twist, man. I thought having a character not in love would shake up the cast, but nope, his ass had a secret love even he didn't know about. Did Rosebell gaslight him into it or something? Anyway, Rosebell says they use him as a sample, which 12 doesn't agree with, but democracy manifests in Alcott voting yes on the proposition, and they start grilling him. I don't know why Rosebell feels the need to despair bait him here before even starting, and he describes it as being so cold. Why is it so cold? Before falling and fucking dying. I don't know if his neck broke or he went out gold, but the other two start talking like it's a science class lab assignment, and 12 calls them out. Rosebell then says the dumbest shit ever by saying if they did the alternate method, it wouldn't work since Cinderella died, which is just incorrect. And then Alcott agreed to help, so they should just thank Minstrel for his sacrifice, which he barely fucking agreed to. Justifiably pissed off, 12 tells off Alcott for being an accomplice in unethical science, and tells him he hates him, which is what finally triggers his self-destruction protocol tweak event, which caused him to have an epiphany. He asks Rosebell to use the alternate method, aka friendly fire, so he can respawn and tell 12 what he learned, when Rosebell is a fucking moron that tells him he won't do it because he already activated self-destruct, and he'll just reactivate after, since he would still hate him and he can't do something so pointless, even though they could probably still tell him in time eventually. But Rosebell's a shithead, so now let's just have Alcott tell you it before he dies. Apparently what he learned was if a doll who's heartbroken gets reached out to by a doll that loves them, they can counter it, like a frequency balance. Rosebell then addresses that 12 and Sartain aren't good for the job to Izanami, who's watching all this on the FNAF monitors with Sartain in his lap. Okay, Rosebell should jump off a cliff, but that's the end of Volume 3. Man, shit is going down. How will the series end? I'm on the edge of my seat. And I don't know, yeah, I'm still writing the script. Starting off the final volume, we get our favorite section of this manga. It's exposition time! The two anecdote models are better at processing complex emotions, but because of this, they are more fragile to self-destruction. These feel a little like oxymorons, but moving on. Apparently 12, after meeting Sartain, became able to grow and handle their emotions very quickly, while Sartain was more unstable. I don't know how I feel about them making the female protagonist emotionally unstable. Kinda reminds me of when they gave Princess Peach mood swing powers and a magic male umbrella who has all the power in Super Princess Peach for Nintendo DS. But maybe I'm too woke, as the kids these days would say. Izanami spells it out to her that he wants to do bad stuff until he can make a doll who doesn't self-destruct. So he tells Sartain that he'll be waiting for her to confess to him and put an end to the cycle. I feel like with the series' rising tension, none of the moments really hit that hard because it doesn't do a good job at subtly building up anything, in my opinion. The experience of reading this manga is seeing clues and making assumptions, seeing them come true and going, okay, and seeing what happens next. I'm keeping up. I sorta want to see what's happening next, but I'm not really impressed or immersed or too interested into any aspects. And to be blunt, I don't really like any characters other than, I guess, maybe Snow White, since her wanting to kill him is funny and justified, since he makes me cringe. Speaking of Snow White, in the next chapter we see her planning to escape when she finds Mermaid's corpse and is greeted by Neko, who wants to go with her. Apparently she told him about how he loved Snow White instead, and he jumped. Okay, kinda lame to kill him off unceremoniously, but I can't lie, that's a little fitting. Also, Neko is a yandere who threatens to break Alice to get her to love her, which of course makes Snow White mad, and I'm not surprised that it doesn't cause her that much pain like it did with Alcott. Speaking of this, I do want to point out one piece of foreshadowing that is good, which is that when Snow White told Sartain she hated her, it caused her to go through a heartbreak episode similarly. But when helped by Izanami, she was able to recover, which hinted at her being different as an anecdote model, as well as the counter to heartbreak discovered a bit ago. Anyway, Neko isn't only a yandere, but she's also a masochist, because when she tries to convince Snow White to bring her with her, saying she's smart and resourceful, Snow White tries to basically kill her by yelling at her, which she says is close to love. Damn. Neko's pretty smart. She's metagaming emotions. Meanwhile, 12 realizes he fucked up by basically dooming Alcott, and thinks to himself that he's like wandering in a maze. A labyrinth with no exit. A maze with no prize. He decides to just apologize and move on when they try to stop him from seeing Alcott's dead-ass body, but fails. In the next chapter, he takes it pretty well, only crying instead of dying, but I guess since it's been revealed that he can handle it, even though we knew he wasn't gonna die, but I digress, there's not much of a point. Also, my least favorite character shows up again. Wow, joy! They talk about Izanami's plan, and Sartain tries to say he's not a bad person, so Rosebell fills her in on all the stuff everyone else sees plain as day, and that he planned everything, including Cinderella's death. I guess the Sartain with her rose-tinted glasses, all the red flags just looked like flags. No, I'm not playing the BoJack Horseman clip again. Rosebell tries to convince her to betray him so she can get the last laugh on him with revenge. Well, like the name of the chapter. But she says no because she loves him. Why? She doesn't know. Who the fuck knows? Roswell hits her with the classic autistic sign of defeat and the chapter ends. The next chapter is a big conversation where Sartain and 12 have an emotional talk about what they did, if they did the right thing, and what they should do. I thought the dialogue in the scene was written alright. Sartain tries to bear all the load by saying she'll confess like she should have at the start to prevent all the heartbreak, kind of like when she said she'd take responsibility earlier in the series. But 12 says she doesn't have to do anything. If she wants to take the path of no pain, so to speak, she can just run away. Sartain remembers past scenes of the silhouetted long-haired Sartain and remembers what Izanami said about number 13 knowing what kind of human he is, before she exclaims that these memories are not hers. It's time for the In this chapter, we see a long extended scene of Izanami with long-haired Sartain, who is version 7 apparently. He says some pseudo-intellectual junk like that technically she died 7 times, which we already are accustomed to resets as death, and basically rephrasing Schrodinger's cat. He wants to see Sartain's heart developed into a person, the perfect doll, but all little Sartain can do is talk about her feelings of love for him. Ends up with him rejecting Sartain, her going, okay, guess I'll jump, and him accepting it, and better luck next time. Sartain says she wants to understand Izanami, and I can do all these cruel things while looking like a human, as she puts it. I guess since she sees him as genuine as opposed to everyone else who only sees him as conniving, but the amount of dedication he has to this is kind of ridiculous, but love being ridiculous is kind of a big theme, and very original to say the least. Meanwhile, Snow White's been hard countered by Neko's threat, and their escape plans have been halted, so now she wants to kill predictably Neko because her lust for blood still flows. But everyone's least favorite character, Rosebell, shows up to wreak havoc and calls out Neko for being selfish, when she says it makes her beautiful when she's happy, so shut up. Rosebell agrees with the sentiment of embracing the fact they are dolls and not humans, because acting like dolls is, for him, the pinnacle of stupidity, which is untrue, because he is in fact the pinnacle of its stupidity. Bro yaps about how love, when reciprocated, can cause them to merge together, kind of like what Snow White and Alice said to each other before, perhaps, which amounts to nothing. I was hoping them cutting to Snow White in the middle of the Sartain 12 talking volume so far would be so there could be a side plot of her doing some cool detective espionage shit. But all she did was get hard countered by evil lesbianism, and we had to listen to Rose Dick talk for the rest of the chapter, and straight back to Anecdote Club next chapter. I know it's the end of the series, but it feels like the pacing fucking died at the final volume because it's been a few chapters and all the people have done is talk about stuff that will happen soon. Feels like they're just edging us to anticipate who will confess, just like it's a typical romance manga. Speaking of which, it's apparent this series is supposed to be a bit of a parodical dark spin on a romance manga, evident from the comparisons and tone at the beginning, where love and confessing are a bad thing, and it ironically makes us dread it and its consequences. I think the series fails in this concept and making me feel uneasy or tense about this, since stuff just kind of happens at a breakneck pace, so it feels like there's not much of time to breathe, which is a double-edged sword in the aspect of tight pacing. I never feel bored, but I never feel too attached. Sartain decides to see him because, as she said before, she wants to know his true feelings rather than the rejection he says in order of the experiment. 12 asks if he's necessary in her future, which parallels Izanami telling Sartain he needs her, and they finally decide to set off for Izanami, who's jerking off waiting for them to show up. In this third to the last chapter of the series, we finally see Izanami's lab partner. You remember, right? It showed up in one panel in chapter 11. She leaves soon after anyways, and even he wonders why he's randomly thinking of these flashbacks. Sartain and 12 arrive, and instead of confessing, they ask for some more exposition, sir, please. He obliges and explains the extremely subtle detail that it's called the ARC program because humans are gonna go extinct by the end of the century. At the very least, all human society will crumble, so they want to make dolls that can live on, surpass humans, and continue the legacy of their culture. Except it's a little bit of an issue if they can't even handle rejection without killing themselves, so they gotta figure that one out. This twist isn't shocking, like, at all. It's supposed to be a big deal, like in Evangelion, when we learn Nerve's true intentions behind the Human Instrumentality Project. But instead, since it's kind of a predictable way to turn the series as a, ooh, humans are gonna go extinct, since it's overdone, the ARC hit is so on the nose, and it kind of feels like bro didn't even try to hide it. Nobody just asked him until right now. Sartain asks him why he keeps making her, asking if he's lonely, and we see his memories that he mentioned earlier of his parents dead, and he goes, yeah, lol, I guess a doll clocks my feelings better than me, and the chapter fucking ends. Okay, man, I'm honestly impressed. Kagesura managed to make a way more shallow sociopath than Sato ever was. To clarify, yes, I know it's intentional that he seemingly doesn't have much depth, but I'm just looking at this, and the true reasoning they hinted at being everyone around him being dead. It's fucking boring, I just don't care. I don't give a fuck about this guy at all. He says he's impressed by how far Sartain's emotional intelligence has grown, and he says he loves her, which makes her happy. So predictably, he also rejects her, since literally all he wants to do is for her to survive rejection. 12 can't understand this, despite the fact that Izanami has explained it repeatedly in depth. He does wonder if it's maybe because he's a doll and Izanami is a human that he doesn't understand, which would make sense why it's so obvious to the reader, because we know how to read and understand things, while 12 is fucking lost. Because we're human. The meta storytelling is so good, guys. This is crazy. Sartain luckily gets another epiphany, so we can get some more lore dump, which is mostly stuff we could already infer because nuance is for pussies. Sartain is the 13th doll. Okay, we know. 12 is the 12th doll. Okay, we know. It was made as an assist trophy for Sartain. Sartain says his love is different, and he says it's possible since love is capable of taking many forms, though some of them are hard to differentiate for him. Reminds me of someone. He asks her what it is, and she goes on a speech saying he needs to understand how he feels, and if he can't, she'll help him and stay by his side. The entire reason Sartain says is because this asshole wanted a fucking therapist so he can have a little girl try to tell him how he feels. And this series pulls the most basic, "it's up to you" conclusion ever. Sartain goes on to say she's okay with being rebuilt over and over because she loves him and she's a doll, so who cares what her rights are because all she wants to do is to serve him. She had succeeded in her role, her purpose, to be a doll that literally doesn't care about her own feelings of love, about the feelings of a doll, but the feelings of a single human. Not gonna lie, feels like the other dolls were kind of doomed to fail when the only one that was able to survive was the one that was actually treated and cared for by the human. They were literally NPCs in Sartain's love quest. In the final chapter, we see Izanami and his partner talk about how he succeeded, and how they have a plan to replace humans faster than the Earth corrodes. But he doesn't care, so we don't get to hear any of that. Not that I really care either. His only wish was to keep the school running so he can play director in his literal school dollhouse so the dolls can continue to live together. Which honestly sounds like hell. I don't know if I'd rather stay in Hazbin Hotel. It's that bad. I'd jump off the school roof like a mermaid after having to listen to Rosebell talk for like 10 minutes. Also, Cinderella's alive again. Izanami probably fucking lied about her AI being fucked or something, but whatever, who cares about anything? In his words, he's happy since he and Sartain are equals, so they can live together in that fuck-ass school until he dies. The last words of the manga say the tale of Sartain will continue until he dies, which I'm not sure if that means a new tale will begin when she joins the new humanity of dolls, or if she's literally will die after he does, like being reset or something, but probably the former. I don't care. And that's the end. Nothing ever happens. Life goes on. Sartain in Love is fucking weird, because it starts off with an extremely strange tone, which shifts drastically shortly in. You watch Sartain learn about why everything is going on at the school, which turns out to be pretty simple, kind of already know, which is that he just wants her to survive a rejection, thing that was said at the end of Volume 1. You get to learn all this other stuff, but that doesn't actually change anything for Sartain and us. All she does is have a single conversation where she asks him his feelings, figures it all out without his help anyways, and survives. She had a longer conversation with 12 about if she could talk to him more than how long it took for her to resolve everything. It kinda has the opposite effect of the ending of Happy Sugar Life in the sense that I felt most of the scenes didn't add much, but luckily the ending was thematically satisfying. In this series, it felt like they tried to build up so much just for reveals at the end to be nothing we couldn't see coming, and most of the events don't fucking matter. Remember Snow White? She literally doesn't get a character arc. She tried to escape for Alice, but gets shut down and forgotten about. Rosebell farms a shit ton, but he does practically fucking nothing. 12 gets to help Sartain in the end, I suppose, but it's brushed off that he was made to do that from the beginning and Izanami's grand plan, so whatever. I feel like the bigger cast in this series compared to Happy Sugar Life didn't help, as that series had some characters that could have used a little more, but they were at least somewhat idealized. Well, 90% of the characters in here I could give less of a shit about, less than a thought about. I don't fucking care about anybody at all. Speaking of Izanami, he's an extremely fucking boring character. For being one of the 3 pillar characters of the show, other than Sartain and 12, his entire motivation is spelled out, but it still acts like he's all mysterious and that the payoff is worth it. He's supposed to be intimidating, but it comes off as super forced. Sartain as the protagonist gets the most development of anyone, where she's supposed to develop from an abrasive no-shits-giving attitude, rule-following strickler she is in Chapter 1, until the emotionally intelligent doll she is at the end, where she can survive the turmoil of rejection. This is represented a little with Sartain being more apprehensive to any emotional talk at the start of Cinderella, and then over time being able to discuss things relating to emotions better, which is relatively subtle, but it's not super impressive, and her asshole abrasiveness is erased, which is super annoying and feels like a course correction for people who thought she was annoying. I was somewhat interested in been what would be done with 12, considering he was fucked from the beginning as Sartain didn't love him. So he had to find some other way to end up, whether that be survive rejection or die trying. Well, this series decided to do neither, and he just kind of gets over the fact that he can't be with her, and will just give her his love by supporting her getting with another guy and living being friend-zoned for all eternity. Not to say that it doesn't make sense, or they can't be friends, but I feel like he's in the same spot where he is at the beginning, which is very unsatisfying. The entire way this series concluded feels unsatisfying. Happy Sugar Life, the ending felt that way in a sense that it took the happy ending from you and left you with an empty feeling of defeat. But that was an intentional and well-executed way to end it. And the whole building being set on fire, the final confrontation, being a little contrived, it still felt climactic and fitting. But it made it feel like a big deal, an ending of the show. Their Happy Sugar Life was literally burning apart, and it shows their flimsy facade being destroyed. On the other hand, Sartain Love's ending volume feels not climactic because they build so much to the final confession with Izanami, aka they spend multiple chapters yapping and meandering about what they're going to do before actually going to see him, which does build some suspense theoretically. Unfortunately, the actual confrontation feels like a wet fart, with the conclusion being, yeah, okay, let's do what we've been doing, but like, now you've survived a confession, so I can stop trolling you guys of endless suffering, and you can live out a pointless school life until you have to rebuild humanity off screen. If anything, I could see it being a commentary on the romance genre, playing on the build-up of giving to a confession only for the outcome to be predictable from the start, and the real challenge was getting there, which I think would be good thematically, if it really made me care about anything else. Theoretically, this could have been subversive, this could have been smart, this could have been something good, but instead, I just feel like I got my time wasted just for ideas. I'm not really trying to be semantic or a hard ass or anything, don't get me wrong. I was so ready to give this show like a 5 or 6 and be like, man, this is better than Happy Sugar Life's 4. Kagisora really did improve. I can't wait to see what he did next. But after finishing it, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm sorry, Happy Sugar Life. You're fucking better. I feel like while reading you, even with taking the fact that a lot of it was shock value, had more value of an experience than this. I feel like I wasted my time reading this. Nothing was gained. I didn't feel anything after finishing it. Only satisfaction that I can finally close the book on Kagisora's work. At least until it gets adapted into an anime or their other manga comes out. Because God knows I'll probably end up looking at that. Okay, now what would I do to improve it? I think there's a good base here to work with. I really do think it's a good idea, but I feel like the main thing that needs to be changed, at least in the beginning, is that I feel like it would be beneficial if Sartain played a role as a more foil to a love alliance a bit longer. Then we could more look into the fact of her joining it for Izanami's sake, her perspective, so that we could play more like a spy comedic angle, and we could get funny antics, which kind of raise the tone, and then you think, oh, okay, this is going to be a more lighthearted series, and we could get more endeared to the characters through those interactions. And then the reveal of the chandelier dropping on Cinderella with their rejection and the gruesomeness, that could be, oh damn, this is a drama, this has more going on. Also, I feel like with the chandelier, I understand bringing it up because it is a good thing to show us so that we don't get fucking sidetracked, like, oh okay, I didn't know they could do that. But the way they word it here makes me just kind of go, oh, okay, it's going to get used. Like, Sartain jokes about dropping it, it's going to get dropped on somebody. As for the rest of the cast, some characters don't need to be changed that much, but some that I would request changes, like with Minstrel, I wish they committed to the perspective of a doll not in love, and they could play on that with the themes, because there are people that aren't in love. And I understand dolls are made to be in love, but they very clearly set up this guy to be concerned with the fact he didn't love. But their solution to it was, actually, he did love somebody, he just didn't know, which is very lame. Also, just having any story reason for the types of dolls, even background-wise, could be a good way to integrate world building, because it kind of sucks that the way it is right now, they're just kind of like, yeah, this is the shit fart doll, and that's the reason why they just, like, ate bread or something. Like, it doesn't help anything. I thought that a minstrel being a bard type would play into the fact that they kind of play with people's emotions, but they mostly just use that excuse to carry fucking loot around, like everyone's least favorite party member in the smelliest D&D session. Finally, for the ending. Kind of went on to detail about how I don't like the ending, but I'd keep some of it the same as in the general concept, but I think incorporating Snow White's plot to escape the side story while they discuss and have them combine it in a high-stakes climax would help. Also, it would be kind of funny that in my idea, that starts off as kind of like a play on Sartain acting as a spy in the Alliance, and then seriously taking the spy thing as a genuine suspenseful plot point with Snow White, so it's kind of like a parallel at the beginning and end of the series, and then only for Izanami to reveal that Snow White's plot escape was actually pointless and have her deal with that, rather than have her end up not escaping because Neko fucking hardlocks her when she's been shown to be a super capable character, so it just kind of feels super out of place and disappointing. You could also maybe tie in the fact that 12 was supposed to get a wish for surviving a rejection that was kind of dropped and ended up happening or tying into anything because they wanted to have Sartain have agency, which I do appreciate, but like they could have used it for something. The issue of Sartain Love is not that it doesn't make sense. It makes sense. It's not that it doesn't have themes. It very clearly does. And it's not that it's just generally not a good idea. The concept is there. I could have seen it being good. It's just that it's just not very captivating. I don't really have much to say. Trust me. I know how lazy it is to make a video where you just kind of summarize everything. I did that in the Happy Sugar Life video because that was more of a retrospective, and I wanted to look back at my own nostalgia for the series and truly dig into every scene. I usually try to mention everything about even the smallest details in that video, but I understand that that's why it took so long and why it was so long in general, and it's not very entertaining content for a lot of people. So for this video, I want to be more of a review, really look into the manga, but there just really wasn't much going on. Unfortunately, it just wasn't very good. It didn't have any shock value to write off like Happy Sugar Life. The themes weren't as strong as Happy Sugar Life. Everything wasn't as well executed as Happy Sugar Life. And I probably would have dropped this series if I wasn't making a video on it. To put it simply, if the manga were just like a doll in the series and it were to confess to me, I'd have to sadly reject it. I just don't feel that way towards it.